All right, so now that we have selected some environments that we might be interested in, I want to actually import them into my Unity project and see if they're going to work well for me. There's a lot of different factors here that we're going to check. We want to check if we can understand how to use this because, in some cases, these environments are put together in such a way that they're just really difficult to actually make look like they looked in the picture. Or sometimes they use old elements of Unity that aren't supported any longer. There's kind of an upsetting number of things that could make it not as easy as you might hope. So the best way to just make sure that we're on solid ground is to test these things out. And then we can kind of learn exactly what we've got in these kits also, and that can help us kind of brainstorm ideas for our project. So I'm going to choose the asset store window here. If you don't have that, you can go to Windows Asset Store, and then I'm going to go over here. You need to be signed in to your free Unity account, and I'm going to choose My Assets, and I'm going to look for the things I downloaded earlier. I think this one really is looking like a good choice. I can see that it's actually 958 megabytes. That's kind of crazy. So maybe I'll pick actually a smaller one. This one is 176 megabytes. So that's pretty fast. I'm going to download that one first and try it. So I'm going to click this download button and see what happens. I'll pause the video and I'll turn us back on when it's finished. All right, so my download finished. Now you can see this button changed from saying download to import. I'm going to go ahead and click that and let it kind of do its thing. And I'm just going to go ahead and choose import all here. So it should be like all selected by default. So once it's all checked, I'm just going to choose import and let it do its thing. And so here right away you can see some of the things I was trying to warn you about. It says API update required. This project contains assemblies that use obsolete APIs. If I choose go ahead, Unity will automatically upgrade. So it's gonna, there's scripts in this thing. It said that there was art, but there's somehow code involved. A lot of times they use code to do things with post-processing or just kind of make the scene look better. So we'll see what happens if I hit I made a backup go ahead. This is basically going to try to automatically update the scripts that were in that thing that we just imported to see if it can work with our version of Unity. And, depending on how familiar you are with Unity and programming, you might be able to get this all working. Maybe it'll magically just work, quote unquote, but there could be a variety of issues. So this is actually kind of a good one to try out so you can kind of see what might go wrong. I'm going to go ahead and pause. Okay, so the import finished. Let's go back to my scene. This is just my test level. But let's take a look at the console window. It says you are trying. All right, so this is nothing new. That's just what I already had, I think. So let's hit clear. And yes, the errors went away. That's a good sign. If the errors don't go away, you should probably just find that thing you just imported and delete it. So if I go to assets, how can I find what I just added? It was called, if you recall, it was called Destroyed City. So I'm going to look inside my assets for something about that. If I was paying attention when I downloaded it, or rather when I hit import, it'll show me where it's going to come in as, what the name of the folder is. So you might want to make sure you note that before you import it. So they've organized all of their stuff inside of this Destroyed City free directory. If you use this slider, you can go from previews to text only. Sometimes normally I like to just look at the text because it doesn't cut off the file names, and so I can kind of see what they're actually called. It looks like they give us this one scene. So I'm going to double click this scene file. It has the Unity icon on it and kind of see, hopefully the scene has a like a demo of all of the stuff put together, so I can kind of see what's involved. So that's what I would look for first, is some kind of scene file that shows how all the assets can look if you're doing it right. So I'm gonna go back to the scene window here and then double click this scene to open it. And yeah, so here it all is. And there is like a little character controller in here. So I guess this is so I can run my game and kind of see what's happening. I don't know. I can't move, so that's a thing. But other than that, it seems to be working. So we've got some vegetation and a skybox and these like ruined buildings and some dirt and terrain elements. So it does work. That's a good thing. And I'm going to stop the game since I wasn't able to like move around, and I'm just going to hold right click and use WASD and shift to like fly through the scene and kind of just see what it is. And it pretty much just looks like what I see is what I get here. This is all done with the terrain tools, which is not something I'm going to go into. At least I don't plan on it for these videos. But basically you can use built-in tools with Unity to like craft hills and place trees and grass and things like that. So you don't necessarily need to find, if you wanted to do an outdoor scene, you don't necessarily need to find like models for like the terrain itself. You just kind of need the props. So maybe we'll look into that later, but for now I'm just kind of looking at what's in here. All right, so the next step to kind of analyze this, I looked in the scenes folder. Now let's check out the prefabs folder, because mainly what happens is you want to be able to just drop in like the props, and they should just in theory work, so that I can like create my own scene and organize it with these props. And so it looks like the main prop here is this building. And so you can see like part of the trick to all this would be to then like, you can position it, which if you use these handles like this one in that's kind of like in the corner between the red and the blue, allows me to move it on this XZ plane, because I don't want to like put it in the sky or anything like that. So then the other thing you can see like what they're doing, which is why it's really helpful to look at the scene where you can see how they've set it all up, is they're kind of like rotating it, and then they're maybe even like burying it a little bit and been doing different heights to like kind of get these different effects. So this one, I could do, it will work really well for like background elements. But then the other question is like, could I use just like this for my whole scene? Which I think I could if I wanted. So I could just like make my whole quote unquote town be like, you're like up here and there'd be like NPCs around. So I wanted to just kind of see like, is this enough like walkable space to like fit and use? I guess another thing I could do then is like, all right, if I go in, let's go back into my test level now. So I'll go back in my assets, scenes, test level, because this one has, I'm not going to save what I did to that. This one has like my character, so I'm going to double click Xbot. That's the name of the character in this case. And let's throw one of those, wrecked buildings in there. So go back into the prefabs. These light flares, I don't know, this is some kind of like effect to get like a sun flare, so that could be kind of cool. But I'm not going to mess with that for now. That's like a polish element. We'll deal with that later. Right now we're just kind of like coming up with our core concept and figuring out what assets we can use. So anyway, in the prefabs of the destroyed city, I'm going to throw this building in and kind of get an idea of how it would work as a playable space. So for instance, does it have collision? That's like a big question. If I, well, maybe the easiest way to find that out is to then, I've got it in my scene now. I'm going to take my character. I'm going to get the move tool. And let's just move the character up and see if we can position the character kind of on like what looks like a floor. I'm going to turn this grid off because it's kind of distracting me. Let's see, is my character on the floor? Oftentimes I would make your guy a little extra high off the ground. That's better than like when gravity turns on, they'll fall and land. But if they're through the floor a little, they'll fall through the floor like that. So just if you have to go one way or the other, I would lean towards the character being too high off the ground. I also have this like snapping tool on. I'm going to turn that off so that I can get more finite control over my character and just kind of carefully try to figure out if he's on the floor. Another good trick here, if you click these, if you like see these little things over here, if I click them, I can stare straight down one of these axes is what they would be called. So I can get like a perfect like front view or like a right view, and then I can click this little button, which will change me from the perspective camera, which is what I normally want, to this orthographic view. It's like perfectly lined up so that I don't have perspective anymore, but I can really easily see if my character is on the ground, and I can see I'm a little high. And if you notice when I zoom in with the mouse wheel, it starts disappearing. One way to fix that is to press the F key to focus on the game object that you want to see, and that'll adjust the camera so that it doesn't like make the thing you're trying to look at disappear as you move close to it. And now I can move my guy a little bit closer to the ground, just a little too high, like I said. And I want to make sure I go back to the perspective view here. And I'll run the game and see if I fall through the floor or I land on the ground. Hey, look at that. I'm on solid ground. So this is usable. It looks kind of cool. I could totally make a little like quote unquote immersive town scene here by talking to like other survivors. This one is almost more like a nuclear blast went off or something. So that could be a cool, like a post-apocalyptic, like Fallout kind of concept if I wanted to go that route. All right, so that's a good like example. But let's say that this destroyed city just broke my project, and when I hit play, it just doesn't work, or I just can't figure out how to use it at all. And I want to get rid of it. I'm just going to find this folder that it added everything to, and I can just hit the delete key or right click on it and hit delete. I'm going to keep this one because it's working for me, but if you want to get rid of something, you just figure out where it is and carefully delete it. And when I say carefully, I mean just make sure you're not deleting like something you actually needed. All right, cool. So this is a good workflow for like testing your stuff out, and by using this strategy, I think you can come up with like a solid idea for your concept. Like, I can really use this environment. There's enough space and the collision works, and it's like quote unquote playable. There's no weird bugs. Everything looks right. So I'm not going to be able to really like help debug lots of random assets that you might find on the internet. So do your best to find stuff that works. If it 99% works and there's some little tiny problem, feel free to ask about it. But there's just a lot of things that aren't kept up to date. You saw in this case it did magically work when I hit yes, update the API. Sometimes it doesn't work that way. All right, cool. So once you got a good idea of your assets you want to use, the next step will be to really kind of define your concept in writing a little bit and some pre-production documentation. And that's what we'll start thinking about next.